Hey friends, Donovan here with Trumpet Thoughts and Ernie Williamson Music. So Ernie Williamson's my day job, music stores that I own in Missouri and Kansas, in case you're curious. So if you like what you're hearing on Trumpet Thoughts and want to support the channel, you can like and subscribe and also buy stuff at Ernie Williamson. So anyway, I want to get a little bit more into some of the Reinhardt stuff today. I mentioned it kind of in the initial video about my switch over to Reinhardt, how much that's been helping. And so I just kind of want to do another breakdown of the three main embouchure types today. And I'm going to give you their terms and kind of explain sort of what they look like and some of the core things behind them. And this is important because if you're able to determine which type you are, there's kind of a whole set of rules, parameters, guidelines, advantages, disadvantages to each of the types that can be helpful. I will say this, you will be far, 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 far better served having an actual Reinhardt teacher, someone who's studied with Reinhardt or directly with a Reinhardt student who's like a master in this stuff, type you. You can kind of sort of take a guess on your own, but you really, really would benefit from having one of those teachers type you. Lessons are not super expensive. It's the price of a mouthpiece probably. So, and it's money well spent. So there's essentially, really, out in the real world, essentially three types of the Reinhardt embouchures. There's the type 3, which are downstream embouchures, and there's in those types in the trumpet world we really primarily see two subtypes. We see the type 3A and the type 3B, and then there's the type 4, and that is the upstream embouchure. And in the trumpet world, we'll see we'll see type 4 and we'll see type 4A. I'm going to go into each of those just a little bit here. But the type 3s are the downstream embouchures. Now, I want to reiterate, when I'm saying downstream, I mean that when the air is leaving the embouchure, that it is pointing downstream. And you cannot tell by the horn angle. You could be there's a lot of downstream players that play with the horn straight out just like that, and they are actually a downstream player. Okay, so this really tells you nothing, really nothing. I think the only time that it might be a bit of a clue is if you see someone that plays like this, like that, they're probably an upstream player, but that's not the only type of person that, I'm an upstream player and I don't look like that when I play. Here's how you can tell. So the difference between upstream and downstream, this is really fascinating. It's the percentage of upper lip that you have in the mouthpiece. So you have, whichever upper lip predominates. So if you have more upper than lower, you're going to be a downstream player. And it doesn't matter if it's just a little bit more, 51%, or if a lot more. If you could have it like set almost right below your nose, even if it comes straight out, you're going to be a downstream player. Your horn angle is just a factor of your underbite, or your overbite, I mean. So the size of your overbite. You see, I don't have a very big overbite. So even when my teeth closed, my mouthpiece is pretty straight, like that. And so it doesn't take much for me to align my jaw to push it out. So the angle matters not at all for whether you're upstream or downstream. It's just the percentage of the mouthpiece. So in the type 3, it's anyone who's got 51% or more upper lip in the mouthpiece cup. And then the type 4 is going to be the opposite. It's anyone who's going to have more bottom lip in the cup. So 51% or more in the bottom in the cup. Now you might be asking, well, what about those who are exactly 50-50? Nobody's 50-50. Nobody. Nobody's exactly 50%. And here's why. Our air, when it leaves our embouchure, has to either go up or down. It has to. It's all our brass playing is all about angles. So it has to either at the top of the cup or the bottom of the cup. If the air came out of your embouchure and went through the hole directly, so if it was straight, which is what would happen if it was perfectly 50-50, it would cancel out and there would be no sound. You would just have the sound of rushing air going through the instrument. So everyone's either upstream or downstream, all right? So let's just dispel the myth that you can tell by, whether someone's horn's straight out or down or whatever. You can't tell that. It's just which lip predominates in the cup, okay? Most of the trumpet playing world is a type 3. They're a 3A or 3B. With the 3As are downstream players, and they tend to have the highest placement. sometimes almost like, 80% or whatever the top lip will be up in that top cup. 3Bs tend to be between 50 and 60%, somewhere right around there. But here's the main difference between those two players. The 3A pivot, they have a type 1 pivot. And what the type 1 pivot means, pivot again does not mean this, doesn't mean like the bell movement this way, like you may have always been taught. The pivot is the track of your outer embouchure, which is the mouthpiece and lips, as it slides up and down on your teeth. For a type 3A player, as they ascend, and you'll see this mainly on intervals of a fourth or higher, the mouthpiece goes up. Like that. Do, do, and it moves up like that. It won't be that drastic. I'm just, exaggerating it for ease of seeing. And then when they descend, it comes down. And again, I'm not talking about it like sliding up and down on their face like this. I'm talking about the whole thing will move together. Okay? That's the 3A. Easy way to test that is to do the pivot test. You're going to slur from a C to a G, and you'll try pulling down, and you'll try pushing up. That's me pulling down. You can see I'm actually overshooting it because I'm just pulling harder than or further than I need to. If I push up, doesn't work at all. So I'm a type 2 pivot. Type 2 pivot is when you pull down to ascend. A 3A is a type 1 pivot. To ascend, they push up. So as they play higher and higher, the mouthpiece gets closer and closer to the nose that way. Okay. Type 3B, downstream player again, tends to have less of the upper lip in the mouthpiece than a 3A. But when they ascend, they pull down. Okay. So that's essentially the difference between the type 3A and 3B. Most trumpet players tend to be a 3B. And there's pluses and minuses to that, which I'll probably do in another video. Type 4 players, there's, again, two types. Type 4s both have some amount of an overbite, like what I have, but a type 4A tends to have a much bigger overbite. So their jaw is much further back. And even though they play with mostly bottom lip in the cup, their horn angle is often this way because their jaw is so far back. And it's really difficult for them to try to line up their jaw. 4A players usually end up being pretty weak players. Not always. There's been some really great 4A players, but 4A players tend to struggle the most out of all of them. Type 4 is just some amount less than 50% top lip, and it can be anywhere from 40% to down to even 20%, but some amount less. It's about my setup right there. And they always have a type 2 pivot, meaning they pull down to ascend. Always pull down to ascend, okay? So there's strengths and weaknesses to each of these types. For a type 4 player like myself, we tend to have really bright sounds. And so we're constantly, it works great for us when we're playing in commercial settings, playing lead trumpet, playing pop music, or anything where that commercial, bright, sizzly sound is needed. But when we find ourselves playing in like a quintet or an orchestra, a British brass band, a wind ensemble, we have to find deeper equipment to help us tame that brightness down. Okay. Oftentimes too, you'll find a type 4 player can essentially play almost any like diameter of mouthpiece, but they definitely benefit from playing just smaller diameter mouthpieces because they have so little top lip in the cup. They just don't need the big. If they play a big wide mouthpiece, most of that mouthpiece is down on their chin, so it's literally serves no purpose. It's like extra volume that's not needed. So for them, they can use a much smaller diameter. And when I say smaller diameter, I'm saying like to a type 4, a 7 could be a big mouthpiece, big diameter. I'm currently playing on something that's about the size of like a Bach. I think it's about a Bach 10.5, which is the smallest diameter I've ever played, and I could probably go smaller, which is crazy. But when I'm playing like wind ensembles or things where I need a deeper sound, I'm using a B cup, which is like a super, super deep cup to do that. So that's kind of the common thing for Type 4 players. Type 3A players, they will often tend to play a little bit larger diameters, so anything from maybe like a 3 up. And they can be very sensitive to cup depth because they just have so much top lip in. But they usually have enough firmness here, if they've developed the musculature here, that they can get by with playing a pretty shallow cup. And a lot of advantages to a Type 3. They usually have great sounds, good flexibility, and pretty good endurance. Now, most trumpet players are 3Bs, and there can be some downsides to a 3Bs. 3Bs are known for being kind of like a workhorse player. They're known for having good sounds, but they sort of have like a little bit of both the 3A and the 4A tendencies in certain ways, which sort of makes them like a jack of all trades, master of none. They don't have like the richness of tone maybe that like a 3A has, and they don't have the easiest of upper register like the way a Type 4 has. But that's where most trumpet players lie. Sometimes Doc would try to move a 3B player to a 4 or a 3A if they could align their jaw and play that way. Pretty much, it's very rare that a 3B could shift to a 3A. But if they're a 3B player, like, because if I'm not careful, I can play as a 3B. And all I need to do really is just align my jaw, which doesn't take much effort, and move the mouthpiece down, and I'm playing as a 4. So sometimes 3Bs can do that, and that works. A lot of times we see people that are currently playing as a 3B, so they've got that roughly 50-50 mouthpiece placement and they're playing downstream. But when they were younger, they played lower, and a band director or a private teacher at one point tried to get them to move their mouthpiece up. And ever since then, they've struggled and haven't had quite the ease of playing they used to have, which is my story. Those folks should probably switch back over and try playing as a Type 4. So those are the 3 main types. Those are essentially how you can tell. Quick run through. So the Type 3A has majority top lip in the cup and generally has like quite a bit of it. You know, maybe 70% or more of the cup is covered, or their top lip is in the cup. And then as they do slurs of like a 4th or 5th or more, they are aided when they push up to ascend, okay? Type 3B players have that, you know, again, more upper lip in the cup than bottom. And when they ascend upwards, they benefit from pushing their whole embouchure tract down to the ground as they ascend. And then Type 4 players have less than 50% upper lip in the cup, and they also have pivot classification 2, where they pull down when they ascend. So let me know in the comments which type you think you are, and if you ever want any help with this stuff, I'm happy to kind of give you my own opinion, and more importantly, direct you to a Reinhardt teacher. All right, hope this helps.